riding on the hood like it's no big deal. And there's a inside, bro.
The guy actually says there's a baby inside the car while this guy's riding on the hood. Yeah.
Bro, mid 95, bro. Most dangerous highway on the planet. And this hiding, bro. What the actual
Some amateur storm chasers, they may have wanted to think this through just a little bit more. They ran out of gas as they got really close to this tornado. And considering the fact that tornadoes tend to go whatever direction they feel like, maybe not the best option to be out of gas. Have you ever seen a gas hose freeze in midair like this? This is what happens when it's negative 48 degrees Celsius, or about negative 54 Fahrenheit. Can you imagine waking up to this, seeing half your house gone, and where the wall is you see a massive river of flood water going by? What in the world? Just imagine. I don't know if this person has a way out of their house even. Overpass being completely overwhelmed and flooded in South Sulawesi in Indonesia. Probably this is the Jena Barang River that we're looking at. Some people actually try to cross the river on these little overpasses while it was virtually being covered like this.
Alter! Junge!
Some pretty hilarious footage of tents magically flying around. Some whirlwind apparently. I'm guessing this guy wasn't expecting to be floating around in his car like a boat when he was on his way to work today. We can see here with the strange flooding of recent last couple months, we've had a few different floods in Saudi Arabia, and now look at the land. It's turning a little bit greener than what you would expect for Saudi Arabia. This man's driving around showing how there's a massive amount of land that is now covered with grass and is green. Sort of amazing sight.
Calm them down. You're not doing any good.
Right here. God. Dear God, never please forgive me for my sins. Brandon, we're gonna die. I love you. I love you. Brandon!
I am confused. Being philosophically consistent and being a very honest person, I'm sure you can tell me where God came from. And in addition, once you've told me where God comes from, please try to clarify how you can figure that a spiritual force can have an impact on a material universe to create it. I think that some years ago we already talked about that kind of thing in philosophical circles at any rate, by posing the question, if angels are made of spiritual matter and a pin is made of material matter and spiritual matter displaces no space, how many angels can dance on the tip of a pin? Please do, go ahead.
You got 5 minutes. Now, I just want to know which question.
That's all right, you may take the rest of the minute.
We're supposed to do one question at a time. Which one would you like? That was part of the format for the debate. So which question?
I want you to fill in the story of the rest of the beginning of the universe. God, spiritual matter, impact on material matter.
Okay, so 2 questions. All right.
Go ahead.
All right, your question, where did God come from, assumes that you're thinking of the wrong, obviously it displays that you're thinking of the wrong God, because the God of the Bible is not affected by time, space, or matter. If he's affected by time, space, or matter, he's not God. Time, space, and matter is what we call a continuum. All of them have to come into existence at the same instant, because if there were matter but no space, where would you put it? If there were matter and space but no time, when would you put it? You cannot have time, space, or matter independently. They have to come into existence simultaneously. The Bible answers that in 10 words. In the beginning, there's time. God created the heaven, there's space, and the earth, there's matter. So you have time, space, matter created, a trinity of trinities there. Just, you know, time is past, present, future. Space has length, width, height. Matter has solid, liquid, gas. You have a trinity of trinities created instantaneously, and the God who created them has to be outside of them. If he's limited by time, he's not God. The guy who created this computer is not in the computer. He's not running around in there changing the numbers on the screen, okay? The God who created this universe is outside of the universe. He's above it, beyond it, in it, through it. He's unaffected by it. So the concept that a spiritual force cannot have any effect on a material body, well then I guess you'd have to explain to me things like emotions and love and hatred and envy and jealousy and rationality. I mean, if your brain is just a random collection of chemicals that formed by chance over billions of years, how on earth can you trust your own reasoning processes and the thoughts that you think? Okay, so your question, where did God come from, is assuming a limited God. And that's your problem. The God that I worship is not limited by time, space, or matter. If I could fit the infinite God in my 3-pound brain, he would not be worth worshiping, that's for certain. So that's the God that I worship. Thank you.
What's interesting is you have an insect called Iscoloptratus that has gears in its legs to keep both legs in unison when the insect hops. You also have microscopic rotors called flagellum that you can find in bacteria, and this is on a microscopic level. So you have these different parts that are very similar to components you would see like in a car's, powertrain, in its engine. You have these parts that are in creation, that are in insects, that are in animals, that are in bacteria, that are very similar and mirror the parts you see in cars. It's so strange. I thought cars were designed by humans. Why is it something that's even more microscopic that we can't even create is in a bacteria with a similar structure? It just doesn't make sense that this is all by random chance.
I don't know who or what or how, but the evidence is overwhelming that there is an intentionality and a design that underlies our existence. So as a scientist, my thinking was, if that's true, who or whatever put us here on Earth would have left something inside of every one of us that tells us we're part of a greater existence and tells us that we're a family and that we're not so different from one another. And if I could find that, if I could find that common denominator, that somehow maybe it would help us to become greater than the differences, that began a search. And I combined the science that I know of biology and history and ancient language, linguistics, genetics, with the new science of computers that were now on my desktop. And Daryl, I'll tell you, I remember the very first time as a scientist that I had the opportunity to see the human genome, a piece of human DNA coded on my computer screen. And all the CTAG, it all rolled down through the screen. And my brain looked at that. And I remember thinking, I said, I don't know what that says, but there's a code. There's a language. That DNA is a language. And whatever that language is, it's inside of me, and it's inside of everyone that looks at it. And some intelligent being placed it there a long time ago.
Using all the technology at his disposal, Mr. Braden then began searching for the message encoded in our DNA.
And this led to a research project using computers, the best science of today, and some of those ancient texts. And the bottom line is that what we discovered is every single ancient language, the letters of the language link to very precise numbers that have never changed. So whether we're talking about the Arabic language or the Hebrew language, or if we're talking about cuneiform and Sanskrit, what are called the ancient core or the ancient root languages, there's a mysterious number that's always been linked to those letters, and nobody knows where the numbers came from. That was interesting to me. So through a process that took many years, I came to understand that the numbers that represent the letter are also the numbers that represent the elements, what we call the elements on the periodic table of life and a physical reality as we know it. So in other words, it is if the ancients, they didn't know about the periodic table of elements the way we do today, but they knew about the numbers that were represented. And when we make the connections between the letters of the ancient alphabets, the numbers they represent, those numbers, if we look at them on the periodic table, they happen to be precisely the elements that make the DNA in our bodies. Now, we have the ability to take the sequences of DNA in a cell and through those numbers link them to letters in ancient alphabets. And lo and behold, the letters spell words and the words have meaning. And this has led to a book that's entitled The God Code. It was released in the year 2004. What we know is that there is a message, an intentional message within the DNA of all life. The message occurs in layers, and each layer has its own code that must be understood for that layer. And I'm still working on the deeper layers.